Well, hello everyone. Thought I would hop on a few minutes early to make sure I have the tech system down a little bit better. Please mute your computers if your Zoom here, if you can. That would be great. It was supposed to be automatic, but it looks like some of you might not be. It looks like pretty much everyone. I'm Jill Hicks, and I am going to open the chat over here so that, let's see, people can share with me what level your athlete is. It's really helpful when I speak. There we go. So let's see. Please, I'll just put it in here. Put your athlete and level if they're a gymnast or year of graduation. That'd be great. I try to make sure I have the technical side all figured out. If you were here last week, I haven't done Zoom meetings in so long. I typically do webinars, but I hope I got it all figured out so people can join automatically and also so that they don't have to, they can be muted right when they get on, so I don't have to worry about that. All right. Glad to have all of you. We're going to start now. It's actually straight up. I like to start right on time. So thanks. Wow, we've got a lot of level 10s here. 2027s. We have some 28s, 29s, so a good variety. This information will apply to everyone, no matter what year of graduation that you are. Um, Okay, let's get started. I have 5 pages, so I'm going to try to swing through this quickly so that we are only here. I like to keep it at 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. I know it went a little longer last time. We just had so much. But I also love for you guys to type in questions. So feel free in the chat at any time to type in a question. I'll do my best to try to answer. Um, this is being recorded, but the recordings only go back to our paying clients. So if you can't join the live, if you're not a paying client, then you wouldn't be able to get the recording. That's kind of how we've decided to structure this. Um, so if I am new to you, my name's Jill Hicks. Like I said, I was an elite gymnast, got recruited to college, got injured, started coaching when I was 17 in college. So instead of being on a scholarship, they gave me a scholarship to be a coach, and I coached for 20 years. So I've seen the reason I'm mentioning this is because I'm just amazed at what I'm seeing and the changes that are happening since I've been a part of this 30 plus years. I've seen a lot of changes, but I would say this is probably the most drastic. And I also want to preface this with I do not know everything about what I'm going to share today, which is all about roster spots. I feel like it's a moving target a little bit, and that information is going to continue to come out. And I sat with two Division I coaches in my home for 4 straight hours on Friday, and we just scratched the surface. So I know I was taking ferocious notes, and I'm excited to share all of this with you, or as much as I can. But in their words, not mine, they're Division I gymnastics coaches. It's going to even be changing again in a couple years. So, with a lot of the possible conference changes and some new TV situations and different conferences that want to move around, I guess. So, stay tuned. I will try to stay on top of it. I know that's our goal at JH Consulting is to provide as much tangible information to our clients and parents as possible. So I'm going to be also sharing what I learned from these college coaches, but I do want you to know that I feel like they're still figuring it out too. So some of this information, I'll do my best to be as truthful and honest as I can, but also note that I think it's going to evolve and change this year especially. All right, so um, let's see. We plan to do two things here at JH Consulting. One, we're going to be sending out a survey to all the college coaches in the sport of gymnastics and maybe acrobatics and tumbling. And we are going to ask them questions to find out exactly what their school is going to be doing with all the changes. And we hope this will be really impactful for our clients. So if you're thinking about joining JH Consulting for that reason only, you will get more of the inside scoop that we're going to get pretty soon. Some schools, as our topic today is on roster limits, but it kept being emphasized to me on Friday that every school is going to manage recruiting differently within these changes. So it's very tricky for me to even speak on this topic because every school is going to be different. I don't have that information yet. We will soon, but it's tricky, very tricky. So some schools are not participating in what's called the rev share. So if you were involved at all in any of my past webinars, it was about the lawsuit that went down this year, and that tipped off two areas. One's called the rev share, one's called NIL. The rev share and NIL have a big impact on the recruiting process now. And if you ask me, I think a lot of college coaches are going to hold their cards a little bit tighter on what they are allowed to do. One, because they're still learning what their university is going to allow them to do with that rev share money, and their roster spots and gender equity and NIL. But the other is that they're going to do whatever they can for their own advantage, which you can't blame them. Recruiting is going to become even more like a business. It always has been a business, but I think it's going to become even more like a professional type of vibe and feel for a business. Some may or may not even tell us when we ask in the survey, what are you going to be doing with your roster spots? What are you going to be doing with your rev share? They might not want to tell anyone what they're going to do because it's not always to their advantage for all that information to be out there. Some, like I said, are still meeting with their athletic directors and being told what they're going to be allowed to do. Hopefully, we will not. Let's see. Oh, I already mentioned that. Okay, so as far as the topic goes today, let's dive right in. That was a bit of an introduction. But basically, I've been involved in the NCAA world of women's gymnastics for the last 30 years. In the past, it was a head count sport. That's what we were designated as a female sport in the sport of gymnastics. So that meant if the school was fully funded, they would be allowed to have 12 scholarships on their team. And they could have beyond that as many athletes as they wanted. And they were called walk-ons. All right, that is all changed. Okay, so now we are an equivalency sport. And that means that our sport will be given, if they're fully funded, and this is the way their university wants to do it, they'll be given a chunk of money, and the college coach will be allowed to distribute that the way they want to. Okay, so that's going to look different for every single school. And then again, some schools are going to opt out of rev share completely because it doesn't align with their programs. So we already know the Ivies have said that. So we know that the Ivies are probably going to stay as they always have been. We don't know their numbers. Their numbers could be different at each school and how many rosters spots they have, but they don't give out money anyway for athletic scholarships, so they opted out immediately and announced that. All right. The athlete typically in the past would sign a national letter of intent their senior year. That is no longer, they're no longer doing that. Instead, they're signing contracts. And usually the national letter of intent would state what the amount that the athlete would receive, or at least I guess it would say, we're covering your tuition fees, books, room, and board. Now it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, I'll go into that a little bit later. But athletes typically also receive travel, workout gear, leotards, And many times the bigger conferences receive training tables. So food almost all day. So there's breakfast, there's lunch, and there's the option to go to dinner. So that's changed a lot since I was a college coach at Oregon State, especially, which was a high-ranking Division I team. But now they have all of that. All right. So like I said, we now have become an equivalency sport. There were a lot of sports that in the past were equivalency sports. Gymnastics just wasn't. Women's gymnastics was not. They received the 12, like I said, and then beyond that were typically walk-ons. All right. So because of this new model that is being put out there, the schools have the option to do a rev share. Revenue share is what it is. So if they participate in the revenue share, then the university will receive, I think it's like 20 million actually per school. I'm not exactly sure on that number, but quite a bit. So they're saying 75% will go to football, 15% will go to basketball, and the rest can be designated by the athletic director which sports they're going to put that money into. So that makes a big difference on the schools. So some schools I've already heard they're getting nothing beyond those 12 scholarships they already have. And you'd be surprised. These are some of the bigger conference schools. So I thought the bigger conference schools would all participate in rev share and gymnastics would receive a portion of that, but it's not true. And the one school I'm thinking of that I was told is getting no rev share for their sport, gymnastics. They are participating in rev share, but the athletic director has decided they are not giving that university gymnastics team any revenue share. So that means that that program, and it's a big one, is only going to have the 12 athletic out of state scholarships. So that's one example of a surprise to me. I would have thought this university would have, had more. So they might have walk-ons. So that team might actually encourage what I would consider walk-ons. Okay. But that just means totally the parents paying for it, or the academic scholarship, or the financial aid is going to cover the cost of those athletes. All right. So I would say that most universities that have had 12 athletic scholarships will still have those. Um, it's really what are they going to have beyond that? There are some other big schools that I know only have in-state scholarships, and you'd be surprised which ones those are. So a lot of college coaches have worked around that at this one university in particular. They did quite well, and they found other avenues. There are other things I'm not going to go into, but that are possible ways to maybe build up your 12 to maybe 13, maybe 14. Um, in the past that were legal ways to do it. So again, just keep your eyes and ears open because you'd be surprised. I guess that's my point in that. You would be shocked at which schools never have had 12 out-of-state scholarships and they've done quite well. And then other schools that have only had maybe 6 in-state and done okay as well at Division I know when I was at Cal State Fullerton, I only had 6 in-state scholarships. And all the teams we competed against had 12 full out-of-state scholarships. It was tough, so I was always constantly recruiting walk-ons. And thank goodness we were in California and so many girls wanted to stay in California and we have so many good gyms there that it wasn't that hard for me. But it's way different when you don't have full rides to offer and compete with. So recruiting does make a difference with all these changes. All right. Um, all right, I mentioned the in-state, out-of-state. Now, some schools will have participation in the rev share. So they're going to have their 12 full scholarships, and these are big colleges that I'm hearing from, but they are only going to be allowed to have 18 girls on the team. Okay, so you might be asking, why on earth would an athletic director from a big school only allow 18 roster spots? And that's because of gender equity. Okay, so there you go. Another little like wow, who would have thought that these universities only get to have 18? Um, but this one university I'm talking about is going to have 12, and then they're going to use their rev share to enhance those beyond up to the 18, a little bit of money to each of those athletes. They're going to use their rev share for that. You can use it in different ways, but that's how this university is going to use it. So each girl beyond the 12 at this big university might only get enough to cover their tuition. Okay, so they're going to ask their athletes to apply for financial aid, apply for academic scholarships, and then they'll give them a little bit of rev share. And that's how they're going to recruit beyond the 12 and hopefully stay competitive with those other schools that get all 20. There will be some schools that get all 20 athletes paid for through that rev share. I don't know how many. I don't even know which ones yet, but we're going to find out. And you may have heard through the grapevine, through friends of yours that were recruited to certain colleges, some big numbers on what they're giving out for rev share. I also found what was really interesting, which I think is going to be curious to me how this is going to work. When the athlete apparently receives that rev share money, it comes in a check, and then the athlete has to pay their bills. So if they aren't disciplined and don't pay their bills with it, what's going to happen to them? Which most gymnasts, I feel like, and families would stay on top of that. But not only do they have to pay their own bills, they also have to pay their own taxes. All right. So, but the coach would be relying on the athlete to pay their tuition, room and board, and all those things. So that could be, I think, really interesting. I'm not exactly sure. It's a legal piece, so I don't know why it's being done that way, but it is. And it's kind of out of the coach's hands once they hand them that check for the rev share. Now, I do believe a lot of colleges are going to have specialists on their campus in the athletic department, meeting with the athletes, helping them understand rev share, how it works, what they need to pay for, and things like that. So I'm sure, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how all that goes. Um, but it is going to be, they're going to be relying a lot on the athlete to do a good job of handling their own budget, which could get very interesting. Okay. The other part that I want to share, which I feel like I'm going to put it out there, but I want you to know you might have a lot of questions, and so do I. I don't know all the answers to this, but I want to give you a basic idea, especially if your family has an athlete who's a 26, especially those 2026 and the 2027s. I feel like we can feel it with our own athletes. It's going to be more competitive and more difficult to, especially right now with 26s and 27s, to even get a roster spot. And I'm going to briefly share with you why. So this is the next piece to the rev share situation. All right, so college, when the lawsuit went down, the lawyers fought for the athletes currently on teams roster spots or roster uh, you know, positions last year, that they didn't want kids to just be cut because of the lawsuit, because then they'd have more lawsuits for those families who are mad that their athlete got cut because of um, the past lawsuit. So they have now said, if you cut an athlete who was on your roster in 2025, they are going to be allowed to go to another school and not count against the roster limit for that year, for 2026. But they want all the college coaches, they had to do this by June 26th, I think. There was a date. All the head coaches in the sport of gymnastics, probably the other sports too, had to decide which of their athletes coming in right now for 2026 to compete next January, all their kids who reported, right now in the fall, they had to do what was called decide on DSA athletes, which stands for designated student athletes. These are athletes who might not make the lineup, maybe never have made the lineup, who the college coach may want to cut so they have more room on their roster in the future. Okay. So we have a lawsuit that says, no, 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 you can't do that. You have to protect them. And this is how we're going to do it. You're going to designate them. So every coach had to, and the one college I spoke to, they had six that they are designating that could get still cut. They're going to be under a protection of DSA. But all college coaches have to, by December 1, make a decision on who their 20 roster spots are for January. Okay. But if an athlete gets cut December 1, how does that work in the sport of gymnastics? Where do they go? What do they do? If they want to stay at the university, at least at this school, is going to continue to pay for their scholarship, their education. Okay, where is that fund going to come from? I don't know those funds. I didn't ask. I forgot to ask that. Then number two, if they want to transfer, but it's not, the portal isn't open for us, and it's a dead period, December 1, what's going to happen to them? So we talked all about that on Friday. And I think they're in the sport of gymnastics, they're going to have to make some adjustments for that. But now, can you see how these coaches are pulling their hair out because they're slowing down recruiting, pausing because they know eventually they're going to have to line up with only 20 on their roster, but these DSAs won't count against their roster for next season, but they will after that, is my understanding. So they're trying to look down the road and figure out, oh my gosh, how many will we have? Are we going to make cuts December 1? What's our roster going to look like? But those athletes will have an opportunity to transfer, is my understanding. So that means they'd started another school January 1. I don't get it. To me, do you see in the past, it was all about protecting the athlete's education, making sure they can graduate on time. We had that discussion because they're thinking, these college coaches are going, how are they going to manage that? How are you going to make sure? I think that's going to have to go away because if they're instead making sports more technically like an employee or professional, I don't see how you can encourage the education piece as much as they used to. All right, that's another topic for another day. All right, so am I blowing your mind away? I know it's a lot of information. Let's see. Make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Be sure to type in your questions if you have any. So how does this impact your gymnasts, especially the 26s and 27s? I think I'm leaving out. Oh, I wanted to share one more thing that's going to throw a hitch in all of this. In October, the NCAA is deciding to change one big rule. The old rule, since I was young, was you could compete 4 years in college and you had 5 years to do it. Now they're talking about changing. You get 5 years to compete in college. You can compete 5 years and you get 5 years to do it. So they're calling it 5 for 5. Okay. So you may think, big deal,
Sucks.
that's not a big problem. But the
It's not a
problem
problem.
is there are a lot of athletes who want that fifth year of competing and they won't know till October. So they've designated them, and you've probably seen it on social media. It's all the top athletes, a lot of them, Olympians and different things, as student assistant coaches. So they can, it looks like they're allowed to train with the team. And then in October, if they get the yes, they get to be on the team. So that adds another person or two to each of those rosters. They get another season of competing. Okay, do you see now why college coaches are like, oh my gosh, we better put recruiting on hold and let's see where we're at. Okay, Here's a question. Is the DSA and December 1st cuts just for 26 athletes, or will that be ongoing for the future? I don't know that. I didn't get clarification on that. I don't know. I will I will try to find that out. I'm curious, how does the limit to, here's another question, 18 to 20 spots help to meet the gender equity requirement? Right, that's another big deal. Also, how do they justify 75% of the money going to football? They justify it because they bring in all the money through their TV rights and their TV games. So that's how the NCAA is justifying that. Um, okay, gender equity. This is really interesting. So the university that I spoke to, um, they, how do I say this? Basically, they don't need more females. So gymnastics won't benefit from gender equity at this university. They have an overabundance of female athletes already. So that's a bummer. And so there you go. It depends on each school and what their numbers are based on based on attendance. So how many male, female go to the university. So then the athletic department has to line up with that. So that's going to be another hitch in all of this. And that's another reason a lot of coaches are pausing recruiting right now. All right, let me move on really quick because we're already at 12:25. All right. Um, how does this impact gymnasts? This is brand new. No one exactly knows what this all is going to look like. Each college and coach will have their own strategy. It does feel like many D1 coaches are pausing recruiting. However, come December 1, sadly, if they make cuts, it might open up some spots. The other big hitch in all this is going to be the portal. Many college coaches are saying on social media, some that I talk to, they prefer to recruit out of the portal. So, how does that impact our girls? Well, a lot of ways. I know what we're going to do at JH Consulting to make sure our DP national kids are level 10 kids are going to be very competitive with the portal. I'm designing some strategies here at JH Consulting, and we'll implement those with all of our clients. Let's see. College coaches may open their rosters so they can recruit more 26s, or maybe they'll wait, or maybe they'll go in the portal. We just don't know. The ruling is, remember, it's all based on that lawsuit and try not to get in another lawsuit. So keep in mind, college coaches who receive rev share may combine it with, oh, this is a big thing. I'm going to be recommending to all our clients, everybody needs to take their SAT test, not to be admitted to a university, but instead to receive academic scholarships. So college coaches are going to be looking for girls who have a high SAT, even at state schools, and they're going to be looking to see if they can give a little rev share with a little academic scholarship. So a lot of families we've been meeting with since COVID are like, oh, our daughter's not taking the SAT. We don't need to. Our school, the school she's applying to, it doesn't matter. Well, I'm telling you now, make sure she prepares for it, takes it, and does well on it because it could impact her recruiting. And it's not because she needs it to get into the college. It's a lot of schools look at the GPA, the test score, and give money to those athletes. So the college coach will be thrilled. And then they don't have to give as much rev share to that athlete, but they will combine it. Do you see? So that's really important. And also, let's see, keep their GPAs high. Um, all right, the impact. Recruiting for gymnastics will get more competitive. Um, the coaches that I met with all said, "Oh my gosh, Jill, your company's going to be very busy because it's going to get tougher. It's going to be about your connections. It's going to be about what you know. It's going to be what questions your daughter asks. It's going to be all these little things that I'm describing today that are going to matter. So we're going to prepare ourselves as a company. We're going to be ready for more athletes to come on board and be able to manage all of these changes. And we're going to stay very tightly connected with the college coaches. That's what we've always done, but we're going to try to do that even more. Um, all right. Will college coaches recruit fewer gymnasts from the DP program? It's possible. Will recruiting be much later? So I just want to say this. I have never, ever in 30 years encouraged an athlete to go to one college and then see themselves go in the portal and then jump to the school they really wanted. But that's what a lot of other sports do. We've just never had to do that. But now I'm starting to wonder if that's going to be a way for some recruits in the sport of gymnastics to get to the school they really want to be at for their, 4 years after that 1 year. They maybe go to a lower ranked school, compete a lot. The other big thing is your athlete better make the lineup and they better make it out of the gate. So making sure I'm going to be talking to my own advisors to make sure that the athletes we're placing on teams or helping place on teams really truly do have a shot at the lineup their freshman year because you don't want to get cut and you don't want to have opportunities taken away because you go in the portal, but you have no videos to show to get you onto another team. It's all about that as well. Whew, there's a lot involved. I'm sure you guys are spinning right now in your head. Um, but again, I would say the critical items we're going to be recommending are pick a college you love with or without gymnastics, because it's going to be a little more cutthroat. Keep your GPA high, take your SAT, pick a college where you can make an impact immediately. I know sometimes you don't know, and that's where hiring an advisor can really help. We all want to believe our kids are going to make this lineup and that lineup, but oftentimes we actually can ask the college coach directly what they won't want to say to the athlete, they'll say to us, and we can then direct the athlete, which is a big plus. All right, my final thoughts are roster limits don't mean opportunities are gone. They mean you need to be more intentional in your recruiting process. That's where JH Consulting can really help you. With access to every college program, contact tools, data, all the different things we do to prepare our clients, I think it's going to be even more important. But I can just say you want to show the least amount of risk as an athlete. You want to be very seasoned. You have to prove that to the college coach if you're going to compete against the portal situation. You're going to have to compete against them looking in the portal and going, well, this athlete is already a college athlete. So we're going to make our JH girls look as good as we can with the things I know these college coaches are going to be doing comparables to. So there you go. That's skimming the surface on how recruiting has changed, how recruiting is changing, and how it's going to evolve. I think between now and December, really, and then beyond that, it's going to change even more. And we're going to stay positive. We're going to keep building confidence in our girls, and we're going to get to the bottom of how to make them the most marketable that we can. And here's some more questions. All right. Will there be roster spots available for athletes that don't need the scholarship money? So it used to be those walk-on spots were just wonderful. I loved my walk-ons. And I loved when I was in Oregon to find Oregon girls who were good on one or two events to be on my teams. And the parents would say, we can walk on financially. That was a dream come true for a college coach to find those kind of kids. But I think now it's going to be more competitive than just being a nice girl from the state that you're in, and maybe you can make one spot. It's going to be more competitive for those spots. I think that's how it's going to change. So will there be spots? Yes, like that. But I think they're going to be more competitive because they're going to have a little bit of money. The rev share schools, they're not going to want to give it to somebody who's a risk, to somebody who's just a nice girl, to somebody who, we used to, I mean, I don't even want to tell you the kind of things college coaches used to do with walk-ons that they just never said it out loud, but it was things that enhance their team that really weren't about the gymnastics. So, all good stuff, but I just think all of that is going to evolve and change. Would you recommend joining college club gymnastics in order to stay relevant while everything is going on? No, not if they want to be a college athlete. Most club gymnastics teams, although I did have one do that at UCLA. She was on the club team and she's at Penn now. So it did work for her. We had to do a lot on the back end stuff, to get her marketable, but it's very rare. In fact, I've never seen that happen before. Most of the college club teams barely have a coach, barely have time to work out, things like that. So it's tough. What would you consider a good test score? I would definitely say for the really strong academic schools, a 1400 and above. To receive just some academic scholarship money depends on the state. We did talk about this Friday. Depends on the state, depends on the school. What they tend to give out for test scores and GPAs with academic scholarships. So I would say above 1200 would be really helpful for the academic scholarships. Will there be, okay, we just said that. Does the ACT count the same? Yes, since many schools, it depends on the school. Now, the higher ranking school, academic schools, the Ivies, some of them want SAT only. Does this only affect D1 schools? Okay, everything I just shared, yes, is the D1, most of the D1 schools. But it does have a trickle down effect. So if more girls aren't going to get on roster spots D1, they're going to trickle down to D2 and D3. So that's what's going to impact those schools. Just the maybe numbers of stronger gymnasts on those spots. I don't know. It's something but they might have bigger rosters, so they can still carry more. So I don't know. We'll see. What would you consider? Okay, we did that. Would you recommend joining? No, not necessarily. Thoughts on a GP or a gap year or D3? Yeah, sometimes a gap year is the right thing to do. We've never encouraged it totally, but other sports, they do it all the time. There's just a lot of NCAA rules you don't want to break. Otherwise, it impacts their eligibility. Yeah, we might see more girls go D3 and move up to D1, because they'll get a lot of competition, right? They'll be able to compete a lot. And then they can send those videos and when they go in the portal. Would you say that this year, with all the changes, gymnasts should work with what they have college offer wise and commit sooner while spots are open, or wait? It just depends on your athlete. I'd have to look at her skill level, consistent, all the things to decide that. But in general, I would say, for example, if they're last year and your gymnast is hoping to do well and get more offers later in the season, some colleges say they will recruit later, right? They could. Nobody knows. This is brand new, brand new. But I do think there are some that are coming out of the gate looking for those 26s that didn't get picked up for various reasons. So they want to come out and do really well, I would think in January and February, so that they can get those spots quick. Or is it not worth the risk? It just depends on your athlete. I have some that's what our whole goal is going to be. And because I'm looking at their skill level, I know what these coaches want and they're doing it in practice now. So I know they're going to be marketable, but I wouldn't know that unless I saw a lot of 25s commit later. Yeah, I would say recruiting this year, yeah, got pushed later than it's ever been. But we don't know what the future really holds quite yet. Do these rules make it even harder for a specialist to find a roster spot? Depends on if she's a great vaulter, I'm still hearing they're looking for vaulters. So, a 10-0 vault, the start value in college is still very marketable. So if a team opts out of revenue share, does that mean they can carry over the 20 girls? My understanding is yes. What is a good ACT score? So to get into the really strong schools, you're going to need, I believe, a 36 is the max. Is that right? Vicky, you might want to tell me, or Luann, I can't remember. I think it's 36. So a 30 three, no, is it only a 33? I forget. I know they changed the SAT totals. I forget ACT. So I would say in the 30s. That's a great score, or high 29s. Oh, it is out of 36. Thank you so much. So 30s are great for, again, for strong academic schools, but also for scholarship money, academics. Also, highly recommend honor schools at state schools. Oh, Christy's saying 32 is best now. My academic advisor, she just texted me. So did it change, Christy? I don't know. I didn't realize it moved down to 32 as the most. I thought it was okay. Hmm. I'm gonna have to double check. Oh, 36 is the highest score. Oh, what she's saying is a 32, over 32 is great. Okay, got it. Thank you, Christy, for the top schools. All right. Bars and beam specialists, are they marketable? Bars. Bars is very marketable. Beam, everyone can do beam. Everyone has 10 start values, but it's whether or not they can stay on the beam and score well. Any chance for new? Okay. Rachel, who are you? There's something brewing out there, so we'll see. I cannot make an announcement today, but keep your eyes and ears open. Wouldn't that be great? She asked if there was a new D1 program coming. Sorry, sorry. I can't share any details. All right, you guys. Oh my, it's 12:40. I went way too long. I hope this was helpful. Again, JH Consulting's here for everyone, really all sports, but we are very strongly committed to, thank you, Heather. We're very strongly committed to the gymnast side of recruiting and aquatics. We have an advisor who does aquatics, but we can really advise any athlete in the beginning stages of recruiting. We also have Christy who does academics. And if your athlete needs help writing an essay, she's incredible. And we have Mike Lynn from UCLA who does our conditioning and getting the girls back from injuries. And he has an app and he works one-on-one. He's incredible as well. So if you need somebody like that, just connect with us. If there is a new one, when do you expect that? I cannot share anything. Should my gymnast graduate early if she can? It depends on how talented she is and her grades and what she wants to study and her maturity. There's a lot I look at for you, but I've done it with girls a lot. But I have to look at a lot of background. HBCUs, what about those? I haven't heard any details on those, but I'm going to keep my ears open. Thanks so much for asking. I'm glad it was helpful. And is it appropriate to ask a school on recruiting visits if they will participate on RevShare? We're going to have a plan with our JH girls on this because it's a tricky one, and I haven't developed it all yet. So there's pros and cons to that one. So stay tuned. Do Ivy schools offer scholarships for athletes? No, not athletic scholarships. Obviously, they have some academic money, or they have financial aid, is what they say. So it's my understanding. All right, you guys, what a great, wow, almost 100 of you today. I hope this was enjoyable. I plan to continue every other Wednesday. Watch for, I'm also going to start being on TikTok. So check us out on TikTok for all you moms who might be TikTok or your daughters. And yeah, we're here for all of you. We have short-term plans, long-term plans. We have future plans. We have all kinds of things at JH Consulting. So you just fill out the forms page, click on the Get Started button. An advisor will give you a call, typically within 24 hours, and you will get your own personal advisor. Can you remind us when you have live and Zooms? Okay, so I do Facebook Live next week, noon hour on Wednesday. And then the next following week are my Zooms. So I go every other. So like today is a Zoom, and then next week will be Facebook Live, and then the next week will be a Zoom. So I rotate, alternate basically right now. I don't know if I'm going to continue that. because there's so many of you coming on these workshops. I might just switch it all over to here, but we have a lot of Facebook families too. So we'll see. I saw this session was being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded, but it's only for our current paying clients. So I don't know if you're a JH family, but if you are, you can reach out to me and I will send it to you. Yes, Facebook family. Come here. Right. I need to start bringing them over here. I like that, Megan. That's a great idea. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your Wednesday. And thanks so much for joining me here. It was wonderful.